Hey guys, it's Jennifer from formulafun.com, and I want to show you the samples that I have finally put together for the 7th grade probability interactive notebook unit in my Teachers Pay Teachers store. As you can see, this is unit 6 in my 7th grade interactive notebook, and it opens up to first being the vocabulary for the unit: sample space, likely, unlikely, independent event, dependent event, and compound event. These vocabulary for this unit are Frayer models that are folded in half, allow you room for the definition, characteristics, example, and non-example for each word. You can easily shrink these down to 85% if you're using a composition notebook. That way they'll still fit in 6 for every 2 pages. And if you do squeeze them together a little bit more, you could fit 4 per page if you have my editable Frayer model and you would like to add in more words. The first lesson in this unit is called What Are the Chances? And it talks about experimental probability and theoretical probability. And in this lesson, first you're talking about the different types of probability, and then students are going through and looking at this graph of times that the 5 students picked a red card or a black card from the deck. They're finding the mean, median, mode, and range, and then they are creating a bar graph based on that data. Okay? And then this little tab book just closes right back together like that. And then the output activity is called What Are the Chances? And this is where students get together in a group and basically repeat that activity themselves. So they see the theoretical probability of it from a activity, and then they are actually performing it in an experimental probability. So they get to go through with their group. Each person gets to draw 10 times, and they get to keep track of how many different cards they pulled, and then finding the mean, median, mode, and range of their data, and then graphing it appropriately. After you have students do this, you could add to this output part and have them journal about what the differences of experimental and theoretical probability are, and there'll be more on that in the rest of the unit. Moving on, talking about the difference between what is likely and unlikely. And you can see here that we go from 100% likeliness to 0%. And under each of these, you create an example of what that would mean. So like in my class, you are 100% certain on Monday or the first day of the week to receive homework in math class. And certain means that it's definitely going to occur. And then as likely as not, flipping heads when tossing a coin, because it might occur. And then down here to impossible, choosing an ace from a deck of cards at random. The reason I put this as impossible is because it is 1 out of 54 or 52%, or 1 out of 52 would be the ratio. So more than likely, we're at the definitely not going to occur. It's definitely more unlikely than even just being unlikely. So choosing a heart from a deck of cards at random, because that's 13 out of 52. And then over here, what we did is we drew a bag of marbles. We did random colors in them, and then we found the chances of pulling out each color without looking. And we went through and created the ratios as well as the percentages. So that's a good lesson before going into the likely and unlikely sort. So there are 3 title cards for unlikely, likely, and as likely as not. And then in this envelope, I like to keep my envelopes closed with little pieces of Velcro because I know I'll be using mine over and over and over again. So saving money at Sonic between 2 and 4 p.m. during happy hour. Well, here, happy hour is every day 2 to 4 p.m. So that is a likely event because I'm going to save money based on if I had gone before 2 o'clock or after 4 p.m. So this allows students to sort these over and over and over again. Then moving on to experimental probability. First, before even going into the mini book, I would play trash-get-ball with my students, and they would shoot 5 times, track the number of shots made versus missed. And then we would talk about how experimental is what actually happens. They'd keep track of it. They'd find the probability of making a score or the probability of missing. Then going into the experimental probability mini book, we would talk about what experimental probability is. Again, that's a refresher, as we've talked about it several times. Talk about what the ratio looks like. And then this is where students would either need access to newspapers, they would need to use their cell phones to be able to go to weather.com or such like that. They would need to have temperatures over a 3-week period for the highs and lows. And then they can talk about the probability of greater than 75 degrees, less than 75 degrees, or greater than 100 degrees. And in different areas of the world, this would be a great activity at different times of the year. After that, I would have us brainstorm examples of experimental probability, and you'll see why in just a second. I added in some additional vocabulary to this one because I wanted students using their vocabulary in their journal that they were coming up on. So we could talk about each of what those 3 words mean. The journal for this one is pretty nice and simple. It says, describe an event that you would be interested in finding the experimental probability of. Outline how you could find the experimental probability. So for this one, I said on The Price is Right, Sam gets to play Plinko. Of the 9 sections on the bottom, 2 of the possible outcomes are $0. Sam won a total of 5 chips to drop down the Plinko board. Since each chip is removed, the outcomes can be the same multiple times. So see there, I use the term outcome in my journal. That's part of the reason why I gave that to the students prior. So I drew a copy of the Plinko board. I found it on Google. And then I talked about the theoretical probability of getting $0 would be 2 out of 9 or 22%. So then experimental probability. Well, in the problem I said that Sam had 5 chips. So how I determined what the 5 chips were is I used the app called Natural 20, and it's an Apple app. I'm not sure if there's an Android version of it. So I went down here and I just randomly went through, and those are the chips that came up. So using the theoretical data of hitting $0 22% of the time, the experimental data was right in line because I hit $0 20% of the time. So that's a good connection that students are going to be able to grasp. Here is an activity on probability of independent events, and it is an accordion book. There are 2 problems there, and then there are 4 problems on the back. And this allows students to work with different types of independent events. We talk about the formula of independent events and the things to ask themselves. Then, moving along, the journal for this one was to choose one of the situations from the prior page. What is the probability that event A does not occur and that event B does occur? So for this one, I chose this event right here. So it was supposed to be A on the first spin and A on the second spin. So I was doing probability of not A and then probability of A. So not only did I work it out, but I also gave a written explanation of my solution. I think this is crucial, and any time that you're allowing students to do output is have them explain it in their own words. And the last and final activity in this unit is compound and dependent events. First, we would go through talking about what dependent events were, and we would talk about the formula for finding dependent events. Inside the flippable for what compound events are and what dependent events are gives the meaning of each as well as an example, and then inside there's an actual real life example. So then going from this, it flows right into students working these 5 word problems. So you can see in the word problem, Marshall's performing a magic trick for Faith and Crystal. What is the probability of drawing a red 3, putting it back, and then drawing a black 4? So then they have room to show their work and then show their answer. Now, I have changed the directions since I originally created this. It doesn't say cut apart the answers, include the correct answer. It actually says write your answer in ratio and percent form. So, if you're looking for a 7th grade probability unit and you think this one might be the unit for you, check out the links below, and I hope you have a fabulous day. Thanks, guys.